Hey guys, this is Halo Wars 2, and it's going to take the place of Momo Monday this week because it happens to come off embargo today. And I wanted to give you guys a first look. This is a first look. This is not a review. In full disclosure, Microsoft provided me with this copy of the game. And you can do your deep breathing for the week, but this might not be the best game to do that to. It's so far, I think, designed to make you hit fast and make you hit furious. It's not one of those strategy games that let you sit back and plan very much. It's designed to be very action-driven so far, as I can see. Now, I'm not real great at this mission yet. You'll notice I fail like 3 different mission objectives before I do a single thing. I have no idea why. I don't know if that's a glitch in the game. I don't know if they've just decided I'm this terrible a player that I fail instantly before I do anything. But there you have it. This is a first look, and maybe that's a mistake that they'll fix before the game goes full release on something like the 20... Let me check here. February 21st. I'm sorry, that's the release date for this game. It's one of the first games I've experienced in a really long time that actually looks better in its release version as opposed to preview. You guys are well aware of many titles that look amazing in preview and then the graphics are scaled down in-game. This is not the case so far in Halo Wars 2. The textures and the frame rates are both better than what I saw in the builds in preview. So yay for that. So far the characters are pretty good. Isabel's definitely a standout. She's got a lot of personality and she seems very human. They haven't gotten too into her story yet, and yes, I said story in an RTS game. Don't play this expecting it to be your core RTS experience. This game, according to the developers, has been designed for accessibility. It's an RTS for people who don't play any real-time strategy games. They're trying to overcome the approachability barrier in these games, and you'll see some of the elements they've included to do that. First of all, you get into it very quickly. The basic maneuvers are very easy to do with a couple of buttons. The trade-off for that is more advanced squad commands. I'm having trouble with them. Not having that keyboard and mouse is definitely an issue here. You'll see some familiar Halo mechanics with the Spartans. Yes, there are Spartans in this game. And you'll see some familiar moves if you've played any of the Halo shooter games coming up right here. This worked really well in this little tutorial version. I could not get those Spartan jumps to work. You'll see some hesitations of me while I'm playing. I could not get it to do this after this point at all, and I don't yet know why. So like I said, this could be me. I'm not blaming the game. I'm just letting you guys know my experience. But it is a beautiful game. It really is, especially for an RTS, and that's because it's standardized. It doesn't have to play on a whole bunch of different computers with a whole bunch of different configurations, and so it's super pretty if you care about that. And you'll notice there's warthogs, and there's those little units are called Cyclops. Now we're fighting it's tempting to say the Covenant, but they're not the Covenant. They're the Banished. But there's a depth to this game that I didn't experience in the first one. I admit to not playing a whole heck of a lot of the first one because I played a bunch of the first one, found it kind of slow, and went, you know what, I want to play Civilization some more. So I might not be the best person to talk about the first game, so there it is, just my experiences with the first game. And you'll see there's This is still early in game, so you're still kind of getting your feet wet. It feels a lot like the way the Age of Empires campaign missions went, where you're sort of plopped on a beach, and I zoomed in on that because I thought that was a cool little bit of just visual excitement. But yeah, you're kind of dropped on a beach and you have to establish yourself on this new map before going and kicking some ass. And so you're going to see sort of the basics of base building here, some basics of combat. Not done terribly well, I will admit, because this was my first crack. For the final review, I'm sure the gameplay will be so much better because, yeah, I'll be better at the game. So here's basic base building. You'll see it was a couple of buttons. But the thing I find interesting about the whole Halo Wars story, and so far, this is one of the better Halo game stories, and I know I'm early in, but already there are characters I care about because they are actually characters. There are individual characters in that game. Anders, you see up the top, she's a scientist. The general is sort of, there he is, Captain Cutter. He's not a general, he's a captain, but he's sort of a grizzled old army guy, and he's one of these better die fighting than live running types. And the AI storyline kind of kicks you in the feels right away if you're at all familiar with Halo lore. And I'm pretty impressed by that because I didn't need a compelling story to play an RTS. I like to make it up for myself. But for people who do need a help into this world, there's Isabel, the AI. She's very different from Cortana. Very different. You know, for people who need to be immersed in a story, there's a lot here. The trade-off from that is that there are a lot of cutscenes off the top. And if you're familiar with the Halo games, then that is no problem. You're well used to it. But if you're not familiar with the Halo games and you're used to an RTS experience, I'm like, let me play. Let me play. Yes, it's all very pretty, but let me play. You can skip them, but the third cutscene off the top is pretty important because it introduces the villain and he's kind of a badass, and so it's worth it. Well, he's a lot of a badass. But it took a while to get in. And as you can see, you can upgrade base elements and all that good stuff. And enemies come fast and furious, and it's really cool. I can't say I quite understand what I'm doing yet, and I'll just let you watch the rest of the not so great in terms of skill level gameplay. But it does give you a sense while I sort of talk about what I kind of like thematically about this game. The game early on sets up two antagonists, Captain Cutter and Atriox, who both share the fact that they don't know how to stop fighting, either of them. That's what they do. They are warriors, they are fighters, and so they fight. And I've been mulling over this impulse over the weekend because of some Feedback Friday stuff that I had fully intended to get to on Feedback Friday. I'd written it all down. I was prepared to kind of talk about it, but the chat filled up because it was a live Feedback Friday, and the questions started much faster than I intended, and I thought it was better to answer people's questions. And it was also one of the issues was something I dealt with on the KIA AMA. So it's out there, it is accessible, but I've realized one of the things that I didn't realize the impact of was that a lot of my stuff that I'd written before I basically dedicated myself to this YouTube channel and my website only is that there's a lot of content spread over a lot of different services, and some people haven't seen it. And I think that might be part of it. I think it might also be an element of culture shock. I am not used to an online environment where people want every detail of of the personal elements of a topic. And yes, it's true. The expectation of interactivity online in something like a video with a comment section is much greater than traditional writing. And I understand that. That doesn't overcome my discomfort with focusing on drama or my concerns that I don't think you should open up a can of worms until you understand the consequences of letting those worms out. And so while I know that it bothers some people to not have me name names and comment that way, they say they find it hard to follow what I'm talking about because of that. I've decided I hear that, I understand that. I am not going to start naming names when I talk about things that are, because I don't know how to explain this. And it's a little bit difficult for me because I don't quite know what's difficult to follow. I've been thinking a lot about this because something being difficult to follow is legitimate complaint. I just don't know what to do about it because I don't know exactly what's difficult to follow. And I really would appreciate the commenters who have this complaint if they could just tell me exactly what they're having trouble following, as opposed to just talking about me like I don't read my own comments. It's kind of funny to watch people complain about me amongst themselves as if, you know, they're in a private room that I can't see. But because the thing I'm having trouble with is that the point of bringing up a particular event in my own life is not to dissect that event, much like characters and setting in a game are not, it's not intended the same way a movie is. It's intended to explain the mechanics to you so you can have fun. And it's the same way. I'm not jumping off from that point to argue the specific merits of a personal conflict in the public square. I find that foolish. It's a thing that happened that made me think about a particular topic, and so I'm talking about the topic, which is why I don't understand the focus on having to follow the conflict. And, you know, because I don't bring things forward in my own life to have people decide if they agreed or disagreed with my actions. That's nobody's business but the people involved, and there's two sides to every story. Another reason I don't name names. But there is the reality as well, and this is where it sort of ties into the plot of Halo, that, you know, much like the Covenant has been trained to see humans as demons, and even those like Atriox who defy the Covenant still have it in their mind that some people are just inherently evil. There are some conflicts that are just not worth me talking about, you know, in that way, because people are predisposed to thinking I'm at fault. And it's because other people or other groups have not presented all the information or presented information in a way that I disagree with the context of it. And so there's really no way for me to effectively get a fair hearing. And therefore, because some of these organizations and places also have very large audiences who go crazy at the mere mention, I don't really feel like it's worth getting into, because it's very difficult to talk about members of an organization that identify themselves as members of a group but don't use their real names without falling prey to this perception of collective blame. Oh, you're saying we're all like this, even when I'm not. I can't convince people that no, that wasn't what I was talking about. I was talking about these specific members. It's just not worth it. And it's interesting because Halo Wars is set up as kind of fighting a losing battle on the human side. Now, I'm assuming there's a way to win the game, but, you know, it is certainly set up from the beginning as the odds being against them. And I think that being exposed to these sort of stories encourages us to fight the good fight anyway. But again, the plots and characters and scenarios in video games are designed to supplement the gameplay, to make the gameplay make sense and exciting and relevant, not as, you know, guidebooks on how to live your life. And I wish that was better understood, because I think it really affects the discussion and analysis, not just of video games, but of interpersonal things that go on among and between video game personalities. And this is really frustrating to me, because I think that we would all find it more enjoyable and, you know, sort of, I don't know, I think it would cause a lot less petty fighting if there were certain established best practices for people in the industry, as opposed to, you know, trying to navigate this environment where a single simple thing can mean 7 things to 6 different people. And, you know, especially with the international quality of video games, where video games are made all over the world. There's no single hub for gaming the way there is for, say, Hollywood entertainment, or, you know, television is sort of hubbed in LA, Chicago, and New York. That makes discussions much easier because of common cultural constraints. And in gaming, it's not like that. Gaming is much more like the Covenant than the UNSC. That, yes, there are some sort of basic guiding principles, but there isn't a shared, you know, cultural background. It's all these different alien groups that have sort of morphed in. And that was one of my complaints of the Halo universe in the games, is that we didn't see as much of the individual thoughts and individual opinions of individual Covenant. They were just, you know, mindless enemies to kill. And the only one we really got any sort of thought from was the Arbiter, and he was backgrounded after Halo 2. Yes, he's in games, but you don't really get as much of what he's kind of thinking and feeling. And I find that a much more interesting backdrop to gameplay than this, oh, let's not give our enemies individual characteristics because then we'll feel less bad when we kill them. I think that the act of defeating an enemy should be, it should be a more complex kind of emotional journey. We all like those villains that we actually like. You know, the big one for me was Voss in Far Cry 3. I'm still in denial that they took that character out mid-game, because it's like, why would you do that? And that's probably why they did it. But it, you know, the Far Cry series has not quite hit that high bar in terms of an enemy that is just, they're just fun every second they're on screen. And I don't think that, I mean, I think it would be great if we could find some way to defeat enemies, both in games and as a metaphor for conflicts in life. It would be great if there was a victory condition that wasn't the utter destruction of your foe. Because, you know, back in the day, there were, when, you know, say the American Revolution, it was countrymen fighting countrymen in a lot of ways, right? I mean, a few short years before that, they'd all seen themselves as part of the same group culturally. And so when there, you know, when troops were captured, when troops surrendered, they were treated rather decently for the most part. And that is something I think that needs to come back. And yes, we like our big bad enemies that are just sociopaths and we don't feel bad killing and they have to be destroyed, because it gives us a shelter from the outsider complaints of video game violence, as opposed to actually making us confront the fact that, yeah, you know, much like, you know, what they did in Far Cry 4, even though I didn't like the character as much like, you know, Pagan Min starts to make sense as the game goes on, and his fate is decided by the player. You don't have to. Other games handle that differently. In some of the Assassin's Creed games, you're forced to kill very likable characters, and that's sort of the point, because you're an assassin. You kill people for a living, you know, and that isn't always fun, because it's for a living and because there is something of a command structure. Sometimes you have to do things you don't really like doing. And I think that's a significant thing to confront in games too. But then you get these critics who don't really understand the choice paradigm, that, you know, developers have the choice to give a player a choice or to take that choice away, and both are valid in different instances, but you have to do it consciously. It has to be a deliberate effect, and it's a gamble, because it has to be unpleasant in a fun way if you're going to make the player suffer. And if it's not unpleasant in a fun way, then players are not going to agree to be part of that process. There has to be some payoff for the unpleasantness. And so I will leave that there, because I think you guys get the basic idea of the game, and we've done a little bit of thinking as we do on Mondays here. But, and as you can see, I'm losing really badly. So yes, this is not playing well in Halo War. So let's put a pin in this, and hopefully later in the week I will be able to show you footage of me playing so much better. That'll be an interesting evolution, right? I'll be able to tell whether I am just not adapting to this new type of RTS with MOBA and action gaming elements, as opposed to the straight up RTS with keyboard and mouse that I know and love. Maybe it's just me not taking to the D-pad well. But, okay, we will see you back tomorrow for Tuesday. I don't know what game I'm going to cover there. Figuring out as I go this week, because I've got 3 different games I have to review, and I just am going, right now. But see you guys tomorrow.